Of course, this week, quite a number of crises that we saw rippling across South African communities, across the streets, and voices of frustration. From Johannesburg's Westbury and Mahikeng in the northwest, communities rising up, demanding access to one of life's most basic necessities, water. Part of what we're talking to Samkele about, and what began as a quiet depression has turned into vocal protests, blocked roads and clashes with law enforcement, with taps running dry for weeks and even months in some areas. So residents are basically saying they've had enough. So what basically is going wrong, and what will it take to fix this? Joining us now is a political analyst, Professor Sethulego Matebisi. Prof, thank you so much indeed for joining us this morning. We do appreciate your time. Look, the general expectation is that as the country heads towards a local government election, you will see a spiraling of such protests from communities that are simply not satisfied with the level of service delivery on the ground. And we've seen this in Westbury and other areas over this past week, isn't it?
Hi, good morning, Griselda, and good morning to South Africans who are joining in. It's quite interesting. On Tuesday evening, I presented my inaugural lecture at the University of the Free State as full professor, and my title was Breaking Chains, How the Tainted Pathways of Community Leadership. And what happens, I was quite surprised just to see the next day all these protests taking place, because that was at the heart of my lecture. But nonetheless, the issue of communities protesting, a couple of the months before the election, is just what I would say the friction or the tension between your invited spaces and invented spaces. Invited spaces where formal negotiations takes place and always coming from the state, where municipalities will engage with communities. But we know all the troubles with those invited spaces, which are highly politicized. And if you do become vocal, citizens are being isolated. And that's why we should not be surprised when citizens create alternative means to engage with the state, and those are the invented means. And protest is one of those means to demonstrate dissatisfaction, and perhaps also to demonstrate where power lies on the eve of an election.
But should we, I guess, many communities are saying, are these discussions, or is the kind of action that they should be taking, so many years into democracy, where some of the basic needs that are required by these communities are simply not being met? And judging from some of those protests, many of the communities calling for leadership in these different areas to come to the ground and fix what is wrong there. Should we even be having this discussion? Do we not have greater problems in South Africa which we should be tackling now? And the basic issues are things that should have been attended to. What is the problem?
A very good question, Griselda, because, and I can even extend your question to say, but should we be having a situation where you've got a president summoning councillors to a meeting to try and address issues which they should have, in any case, should actually be a formality? If we talk about business unusual, then I strongly believe by now citizens should have focused on other things. How can we enhance our education systems? How can we ensure that the future generations will be the ones who will take up ownership of the economy that it's also bleeding? And unfortunately, because you've got a state that is non-responsive, from time to time, this is unfortunately what will happen. It's the fabric of our political landscape, where it seems as if unaccountability and lack of responsiveness is actually appreciated in South Africa and rewarded, because you can't have a situation where even in the event where municipalities cannot deliver services, but at least what they can do is to take citizens into confidence, and that does not happen. In many of the case studies that I've been involved, there's credible evidence that communities have tried to engage engage with the state. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, protest is the only means that I have.
Prof, and I think we're going to see many of them in the run-up to the local government elections, as it's always been tradition, because communities do believe that that's the right time to raise their voices, in particular when political parties want their vote. Thank you very much indeed. Political analyst Prof Sethulego Matebisi, thank you for joining us